return to the story of Robert Downey Jr., land the troubled actor in prison, and he reaches out to a psychiatrist for help.
You are drunk. I am not. Yes, you are. No, sir.
Heath Ledger's naked body in a bedroom around 3:30 this afternoon. There were pills apparently strewn about the body.
We love a comeback story, but sometimes you have to wade through the wreckage to even recognize the star underneath. And these next 5? Oh, they weren't just regular tabloid casualties. They were walking red flags on designer heels or barefoot in a Hollywood jail cell. But here's the twist. Their downfall wasn't just addiction. It was the enablers, the loopholes, the systems that said, as long as the money's flowing, keep the IV in and the cameras rolling. Let's start with the one who literally said it felt like he had a shotgun in his mouth and his finger on the trigger. 15. Robert Downey Jr. You didn't hear this from me, but the Iron Man of Hollywood used to be the cautionary tale, not the comeback king. Between 1996 and 2001, RDJ was arrested so many times that California probably had a shortcut on their intake forms for Robert again. I'm talking multiple times in a single year. Illegal substances in his car, illegal substances in his hotel room, even illegal substances in his neighbor's kid's bed. Yes, you heard that right. He literally wandered into the wrong house while completely out of it and passed out in some random kid's bed. Can you even imagine? The poor family must have been like, we didn't invite that guy over for sleepovers. Would you have recognized the warning signs, or would you just see a Hollywood train wreck? But here's the thing. What should have been a career-ending series of screw-ups actually turned into a string of lucky breaks. Instead of prison, RDJ kept getting what's called therapeutic alternatives, rehab, probation, repeat. Courts gave him pass after pass. In fact, the California legal system practically rolled out a red carpet for him. Under laws like Penal Code 1000, which allows for diversion programs, instead of criminal penalties for first-time illegal substance offenders, RDJ was given every chance to avoid punishment like the average Joe with a gram of coke. And let's talk about how this worked in his favor. RDJ wasn't just your typical addict. He was a high-functioning one, someone who could still show up to work, deliver lines, and look like $1 million, even while spiraling in real life. He was a product of a town where jail time is more of a suggestion than a rule, and where relapse isn't a scandal. It's just part of the narrative. Hollywood, with its warped sense of redemption, didn't see RDJ's repeated arrests as a liability. Oh no, it was a press opportunity, a comeback story in the making. His survival didn't just come down to talent, though that was certainly a big part of it. It was timing. It was a privilege. It was a legal system that had a weird, twisted way of treating celebrity addiction with velvet gloves. RDJ didn't slip through the cracks. The cracks were made for people like him. While lesser-known addicts might find themselves serving time for similar offenses, RDJ's charm, status, and unwavering ability to bounce back kept him one step ahead of the law. But let's not forget, his story isn't just one of redemption. It's also a reminder of the privileges that come with being one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. And just when you thought Hollywood's velvet rope couldn't stretch further, enter Lindsay Lohan. If RDJ got the quiet comeback, Lindsay would have given us the full public unraveling. This wasn't just addiction, it was a spectacle. Mugshots, rehab, red carpets, all in the same week. But did she really keep landing on her feet? Or was it all just smoke, mirrors, and second chances that ran out too soon? 14. Lindsay Lohan. All right, let's rewind to 2007. Do you remember what the headlines looked like? It wasn't just another celebrity scandal, it was the celebrity scandal. TMZ was practically the Lindsay Lohan channel, and every morning It felt like there was a new mugshot, a new DUI hearing, or yet another court-ordered ankle monitor to match her Chanel boots. But here's the kicker. While the world was watching, Lindsay Lohan kept getting what most of us only dream about. Second chances, 6 stints in court-ordered rehab. More than 250 days were spent in treatment centers. And somehow, she never saw a single day behind bars. In one of her more infamous Oprah interviews, Lindsay casually admitted to using, but then went on to call herself more of an alcoholic. And when it came to her love affair with Adderall, well, it wasn't exactly prescribed by a doctor. She claimed it was for her ADHD, except here's the twist. She self-diagnosed and then handed that prescription off to anyone who'd listen. In case you missed it, this wasn't the behavior of someone struggling with just a few bad habits. This was a full-blown downward spiral. But how did she keep slipping through the cracks? How did the system always give her a way out? Experts call it the protected dependency loop, and Lindsay Lohan was living it. As a former child star, she was constantly treated with a sort of infantilized care. Hollywood doesn't know how to handle former child actors, so they just keep them in a perpetual state of not quite an adult, but not really a kid anymore either. So, instead of facing the consequences, rehab became her revolving door. But let's be real here. Rehab wasn't a wake-up call. It was just another leg of the tour, another pit stop before the next headline. Do you think child stars deserve more legal protection, or is this enabling? Let me know below. Lindsay didn't just fail because of her own choices. She was enabled by a system that catered to her every whim while keeping her trapped in a cycle of destruction. Hollywood adored her for her chaos. They sold her pain and let her spiral, all while profiting off the spectacle. Her mugshots were clickbait gold, but her actual suffering? That was buried deep under piles of contracts, PR statements, and a million flashing cameras. So, while Lindsay was fighting for her life, Hollywood was fighting for the next shocking shot. 13. Charlie Sheen. You want chaos? Charlie invented it. Imagine a live meltdown streamed in real time. But behind the memes was something way darker. In 1998, Charlie Sheen overdosed on and had a stroke. His stroke was buried under headlines about and hotel tantrums. In 2011, Sheen went on a media rampage, openly mocking rehab. That same year, his publicist admitted to staging an intervention because no one else could reach him. Not friends, not family, not even CBS, which reportedly kept him on despite the spirals because 2.5 Men was still crushing ratings. And let's talk about the HIV diagnosis. Rumors swirled for years before Sheen confirmed it in 2015, 4 years after being diagnosed. Why the wait? Gag orders, payoffs, and possibly a PR shield so strong it blocked the truth like a legal firewall. Seriously, though, Charlie's addiction was never just about illegal substances. It was about control, power, and a media machine that feasted on dysfunction until it became fatal. And we all laughed. Until we didn't. 12. Marilyn Monroe. Now, here's where things get truly gothic. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that feels like it should be whispered about in dark corners of a speakeasy, yet it's public knowledge. On August 5, 1962, Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her Brentwood home. Empty Nembutal bottle, barbiturates in her system. The whole thing screamed overdose. And the official ruling? Probable self-inflicted. But here's the problem. Nothing about her death felt clean. The autopsy report? Inconclusive. The details? A tangled mess of secrets. Some of the whispers that swirled around her death were downright chilling, like the rumors of a Demerol enema allegedly administered by either a housekeeper or a doctor. I mean, come on. An enema? There was no pill residue in her stomach and no water glass left on the nightstand. Just the quiet aftermath of a life that seemed to end too soon, too mysteriously. But wait, let's talk about the theory everyone can't seem to get enough of: the Kennedy connection. Did Marilyn Monroe know too much about the powerful brothers, John and Bobby? Or was she simply exhausted, tired of being used by a system that chewed up women like her for sport? It's one of those questions that still haunt us, especially when you factor in the real reason she had multiple doctors writing prescriptions for overlapping medications, none of them talking to each other, none of them looking out for her. Marilyn Monroe wasn't just the victim of a substance overdose. No, she was the prototype for something far more sinister: celebrity polypharmacy, a woman medicated into oblivion, at the mercy of men who saw her as little more than a product to sell rather than a person to care for. A starlet smothered in silk sheets and absolute silence. Her death, a tragic, perfect storm of neglect, exploitation, and, perhaps, something much darker. And just when you think the industry couldn't get colder, wait till you see what happened to the boy wonder of the art world. Unlike Marilyn, he didn't have a roster of doctors or a presidential entanglement. What Jean-Michel Basquiat had was fame, genius, and a market that made more money off his funeral than his future. Ready for this one? 11. Jean-Michel Basquiat. He was the downtown prince, the rebel-turned-art world darling. But by 1988, Jean-Michel Basquiat was gone, dead at 27. The press, hungry for a tragic headline, slapped him with the 27 Club label and moved on. But those who knew him say his spiral had nothing to do with cliché. It started when Andy Warhol died. Warhol had been his anchor, some say his only real protector. After that, Basquiat begged for help. His assistants said he was paranoid, isolated, but no one stepped in. Why? Because the art market needed him tragically. Dead Basquiat paintings sell better. He wasn't shooting up in some random alley. He died in his Great Jones Street studio, the same place where Warhol used to live, surrounded by success. And absolutely alone. Basquiat wasn't a junkie. He was a cash cow whose pain was too profitable to fix. The world let him die because it needed him to be legendary, and legends don't go to rehab. Here's the part no one wants to talk about: how addiction gets professionalized in Hollywood. According to addiction experts, many A-listers don't go to just one doctor. They go to 5, under fake names, across multiple states. All are feeding the same habit, dressed up as medical care. Celebrity polypharmacy is the term. It's not just one substance, it's cocktails, benzos, painkillers, and amphetamines, all layered for effect. Why do they get away with it? Because PR teams, lawyers, and managers work full-time to keep the wheels greased. Court cases get delayed. Arrests get sealed. Therapists get hired to write glowing reports for judges. It's not a system, it's a network. For the rich and famous, addiction isn't treated, it's curated. You don't hit rock bottom. You get a stylist, a script doctor, and a spin cycle. And if you die, that's just another brand pivot. From glitter to grave, Basquiat burnt bright but fizzled fast. Next up, an icon who was stripped of grace while still in his prime. 10. Cobain's pain. Have you ever hurt so bad it makes you want to destroy everything just to make it stop? That was Kurt Cobain, Nirvana's frontman, grunge god, and human embodiment of internal bleeding. And I mean that literally. Kurt had this excruciating, undiagnosed stomach condition, some mix of chronic gastritis, digestive agony, and who knows what, that left doctors stumped and him writhing in pain. For years, constantly. And if you aren't spooked already, at some point, painkillers just weren't cutting it anymore. So Kurt turned to not for the high, but for the numb. He once told a friend, "It was such a relief. I could finally eat and sleep." That's not recreational. That's survival mode. But of course, heroin doesn't just take the edge off. It takes everything. His depression, already brewing since his teenage years, deepened into this bottomless pit. Fame didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. The pressure to perform, to stay authentic, to live up to the messy genius myth, crushing. And then there's that goodbye note. Written to his imaginary friend, Boda, it's this haunting, poetic mess of exhaustion and resignation. In it, he admits, "I haven't felt the excitement of listening to as well as creating music, along with really writing, for too many years now." That's not a rock star talking. That's a man crumbling under the weight of his own legend. When they found his body in that Seattle greenhouse, shotgun in hand, heroin in his veins, you could almost hear the unspoken question echoing, was it pain that ended him, or the silence after it stopped? 9. Ledger's collapse. If Cobain was drowning in pain, Heath Ledger was slipping through the cracks. By the time he wrapped filming on The Dark Knight, Ledger was running on fumes. He was barely sleeping, sometimes just 2 hours a night. He told reporters he felt exhausted, like his mind wouldn't shut off. And instead of help, he got handed pills, lots of them. Ambien to sleep, Xanax for anxiety, oxycodone and hydrocodone for physical pain, Valium, Restoril, temazepam. His medicine cabinet read like a pharmacy aisle gone rogue, and no one hit the brakes. Ledger's death wasn't some wild party overdose. It was a quiet, accidental cocktail. 6 prescriptions that shouldn't have been taken together, let alone by someone with that little rest and that much pressure. He was found alone in his apartment, naked, face down on the bed. 28 years old. Christopher Nolan later said there were warning signs, that Heath was unraveling, but no one could tell how far. Because when you're that talented, that beautiful, and that successful, people assume you're fine. Or worse, they need you to be fine. Ledger didn't leave a note, but his autopsy left a message loud and clear. Layer enough medications on a crumbling mind, and even the strongest performances can't save you. 8. Farley's finale. Let's talk about the saddest clown in the room. Chris Farley. To the public, he was chaos incarnate. A human wrecking ball in a fat suit, doing cartwheels in tight spaces, yelling, sweating, and flying through windows, all for the punchline. But behind the scenes, he was the punchline, and it broke him. Farley idolized John Belushi. The problem is, he didn't just want to be like him on stage. He followed the same self-destructive path. Booze benders, rehab stints that never stuck. His friends staged interventions. His family begged him to slow down. But addiction doesn't negotiate. It devours. On December 18, 1997, they found Farley face down in his Chicago apartment. Were in his system. A used crack pipe was on the floor. A woman, reportedly an escort, had taken his money and left him alone, unconscious, cold. He was 33. The real gut punch? He died almost exactly like Belushi. Same city, same substance combo, same broken heart. And if you look past the fat jokes and pratfalls, you'll see a man who just wanted to be loved, who kept making people laugh because it was the only way he knew to keep the darkness at bay until it swallowed him whole. 7. Joplin's journey. Joplin came from Port Arthur, Texas, a place where weird girls with gravel voices were not exactly celebrated. She was bullied for her looks, her voice, and her fire. So when she found the stage, it felt like revenge. But even after becoming the queen of psychedelic soul, Janis was still searching for something. Love, belonging, peace. And she never really found it. Her album, Pearl, released posthumously, is heartbreak pressed to vinyl. Listen to A Woman Left Lonely and tell me that it isn't a cry for help. During recording, she was reportedly isolated, drinking heavily, and using again after a brief sober period. She died alone in a Hollywood hotel room in October 1970, needle in her arm. No one saw it coming. She had just recorded a track the day before and was supposed to meet friends that night, but she never showed. Some say she was trying to quit, that it was a bad batch, and others say she was tired of the loneliness and didn't care. Either way, she once said, "On stage, I make love to 25,000 people. Then I go home alone." That's not just tragic, that's prophetic. Hendrix's Haze. Jimi Hendrix could make a guitar cry, scream, and levitate. But when it came to asking for help, total silence. In September 1970, Jimi was found dead in London. Cause of death: asphyxiation from vomit after taking a lethal dose of Vesparax, German sleeping pills he didn't usually use. 9 of them. That's enough to put down a small horse. His girlfriend, Monica Dannemann, claimed he was fine that night, but her story kept changing. And then there's the manager, Mike Jeffrey, who allegedly once told a confidant he had Hendrix eliminated for insurance money. Totally unconfirmed, of course, but the chaos around Jimi's death has always been suspicious. Autopsy reports conflicted. Some said it wasn't just barbiturates. There were signs he'd choked long before help arrived. Emergency services weren't called immediately. His body was moved. The timeline, fuzzy at best. And then, poof, dead at 27. The most famous guitarist in the world, who once lit his instrument on fire at Monterey, died not with a bang, but with a sputter, gagged by his own silence. His last words? Possibly, "I need help," but no one really knows. But the top 5 survivors turned victims leave the darkest questions. How did they reach rock bottom while still breathing? How close were they to clawing back? And what made their eventual fall feel even more tragic than death? That's where we're headed next. 5. Phoenix's Night. Now, if you're like me, you've probably heard the name River Phoenix whispered in dark corners of Hollywood gossip. But do you really know the full story? Let's rewind to the night of October 31st, 1993. Phoenix had just finished a performance at the Viper Room in LA. He was at the peak of his career, with the world at his feet. But that night, something went terribly wrong. A few minutes before 1 a.m., he collapsed outside the club, convulsing in his brother Joaquin's arms. And that's when the 911 call was made. "My brother is dying," Joaquin frantically told the operator. "I mean, can you even imagine? You're sitting there, trying to help your sibling, and all you can do is beg for a miracle. The cause? A speedball. Heroin and cocaine mixed together. A deadly cocktail." Phoenix had fallen victim to one of the most infamous substance combinations out there, and it ended his life in a matter of minutes. What if his family had gotten to him earlier? What if someone had stepped in before that fatal dose? It's easy to speculate, but what we do know is this. River Phoenix's death was a sobering reminder of how destructive addiction can be, even for those who seem to have it all. 4. Winehouse's warning. And then there's Amy Winehouse, the London diva, whose voice could bring the heavens to their knees. She was a force, wasn't she? But behind that voice was a life that, well, let's just say it wasn't a smooth ride. Amy spiraled. And while we're all familiar with the tragic public scenes, her stints in rehab, the shocking videos, the erratic behavior, it was something deeper that was at play. This wasn't just a case of fame gone wrong. It was a combination of borderline personality disorder, addiction, and, ultimately, her own destructive tendencies. Her relationship with crack cocaine, coupled with her already fragile mental state, set the stage for her tragic end. There's a chilling video that haunts me to this day. A video of Amy singing "Rehab" while clearly high. It's eerie, to say the least. But what gets me is this. She had been struggling with these demons for so long, and the people around her, they didn't know how to help. They were powerless. Could someone have saved her if they'd recognized the warning signs earlier? Or was it simply too late? Now, this next clip went viral for its raw honesty. It's one of the most replayed moments in addiction documentaries. 3. Hoffman's Hazard. Now, let's talk about Philip Seymour Hoffman. You might be thinking, what could possibly go wrong with someone so talented? The man was a master on screen. And that's just it. His talent was undeniable. But underneath that, there was a battle raging. Hoffman had struggled with addiction for years, relapsing on and off. But it wasn't until February 2nd, 2014, when he was found dead in his New York City apartment from a heroin overdose, that we realized how much he'd been hiding in plain sight. In court documents that surfaced after his death, it came to light that Hoffman was desperately trying to get clean. He had been in rehab just a few months before his passing, and yet, after a relapse, he fell right back into the same destructive cycle. There were reports that Hoffman had been buying heroin in bulk, even though he knew the risks. His tragic end is a sharp reminder of the opioid epidemic that's been sweeping the country, ending thousands in its wake. Can you imagine being caught in a cycle like that, knowing the danger but still unable to break free? If Hoffman's death felt like a slow-motion collapse, Whitney's was a quiet unraveling, one of the greatest voices of our time, silenced in a hotel bathtub, alone, the night before the Grammys. But what really happened in those final hours? 2. Houston's underwater now. Whitney Houston is another name we all know. What was the story behind her tragic drowning in that Beverly Hills hotel room in 2012? Some say it was the cocaine that did her in. Others say it was a combination of things: cocaine, alcohol, and heart disease. But what we do know is that the toxicology report painted a bleak picture. Whitney Houston was drowning in more ways than one. The facts are grim. Houston had a history of substance abuse, and when she was found face down in her bathtub, the cause of death was clear. The media speculated wildly, but the truth was far more heartbreaking. In the final moments, she was reportedly trying to relax and decompress before the Grammy Awards. But as the water filled her lungs, it was clear no one could save her. The substances that had once made her a star also led to her untimely demise. What if she had never taken that first hit? Would we have gotten the chance to see the full potential of her voice and her career? 1. King's Collapse. Next up is an infamous story you might not expect to hear. And no, we're not talking about a superstar. This one hits closer to home. George King wasn't a household name, but his story hits just as hard. A 35-year-old nurse, George, fell victim to prescription pills, opioids to be exact. And they took him down the same way they've claimed so many others. George's nurse's notes were haunting. Chronic pain? Check. Doctors overprescribing? Check. Yet, his addiction spiraled. And here's the kicker. Opioid potency was increasing nationally, and that meant a higher risk for overdose. George's notes reflected a man caught in the deadly grip of overprescription, a silent, invisible epidemic that's affecting more people than anyone wants to admit. What if George had been given a better treatment plan? Could intervention have saved him? If you've made it this far, you deserve the truth most people don't get to hear. We've talked about stars who faded quietly, but this was a downfall played out under the brightest spotlight in the world. Elvis wasn't just a legend, he was the legend. But what really happened behind closed doors in those final days? The fall from grace. I still get chills when I watch the footage. August 1977. The king of rock and roll was barely able to hold a mic, sweating through a bloated face, eyes dazed like the lights were on, but nobody was home. His final performance was a tragedy dressed up in rhinestones. Elvis A. Presley was the man who once made teenage girls faint with a single hip shake. But in those final days, Elvis wasn't even allowed to bathe alone. Let that sink in. He sold out stadiums by day and nearly died in bed every night. Doctors would later testify under oath that his bowels hadn't moved naturally in 5 months. His autopsy read like a pharmacy receipt. Over 12 different medications coursing through his veins, many at once. According to one source, he was taking up to 10,000 pills a year. You didn't hear this from me, but one of his nurses kept a hidden log just in case things went sideways. She was that worried about the cocktail of downers and painkillers flooding his system. Could you imagine waking up like that? Doped, disoriented, and dressed like royalty, but already halfway dead? Elvis's personal physician, George Nicopolis, Dr. Nick, filled so many prescriptions that the state of Tennessee revoked his license. In court, it came out that in just the final 8 months of Elvis's life, Dr. Nick ordered more than 10,000 doses of sedatives, amphetamines, and narcotics. Some days, the king popped 6 or 7 pills just to fall asleep. That wasn't a man getting high for fun. That was someone running from the pain of just existing. And it gets worse. According to a detailed PBS analysis of Elvis's toxicology logs, the cocktail he took regularly would have knocked out a grown man 3 times his size. Sedatives and hypnotic medications like amobarbital and pentobarbital, both commonly used to euthanize animals, were mixed with codeine, morphine, and who knows what else. No one was monitoring interactions. There were no dosage checks, just signature after signature. And staffers? They were scared to speak. Elvis was the boss, the myth, the moneymaker. You didn't question the king, you bowed. But the most chilling part is that he knew this. In an interview later buried deep in court transcripts, one staffer said Elvis had a moment of clarity, just weeks before he died, where he told her, "I'm not going to make it out of this house." Imagine hearing that from the most famous man alive. Which brings us to why this matters. This isn't just about Elvis. It's about the illusion of invincibility, the kind that lets a man build Graceland-sized walls around his pain. And let's be real, a lot of folks looked the other way. I mean, if your paycheck depended on keeping the king standing, even if he was only vertical because of 6 syringes and a prayer, wouldn't you? From Phoenix to Winehouse and Hoffman to Houston, addiction has been a silent but ever-present companion to the bright lights of fame. But here's the question. What if family intervention had come sooner? Would any of them still be here? We've only scratched the surface of a much longer list. And if we stop here, it's easy to think these are just tragic cases. But the bigger question is, what about all the people like them? The ones whose stories never made headlines. The ones still out there, battling demons we don't even see. So, yeah, maybe addiction isn't just a Hollywood problem. It's a human one.